On April 10, 1912, the RMS Titanic, which was the biggest and fanciest ship of its time, started its first trip from Southampton, England to New York. Lots of different people were on the Titanic, including famous business people, industrialists, and actors, as well as immigrants looking for a better life in America. The Titanic was captained by Senior Captain Edward John Smith. The Titanic was a big deal back then, and everyone was excited: passengers, the public, and the media. It wasn't just the world's largest ship at around 269 meters long and over 53 meters high. It was also incredibly luxurious. Building this ship cost $7.5 million in those times, equivalent to about $400 million today when adjusting for inflation. The interior was like no other. It had stained glass mirrors, fancy wood paneling, 2 grand staircases, a heated swimming pool, a Turkish bath, an electric bath, a gym, a squash court. For restaurants, to barber shops, and even a library, it was like a floating 5-star hotel. The Titanic was considered unsinkable because of its advanced safety features. The company that built it, White Star Line, was so confident in its safety that the vice president publicly declared the ship's unsinkability. However, just 2 days into its maiden voyage on April 12, 1912, the Titanic received its first warnings about ice in the Atlantic Ocean it was crossing. The route was full of icebergs, posing a threat. Receiving such warnings was common, and ships usually communicated through radio to alert nearby ships about ice in the area, so that they can be careful. Titanic changed its course twice to avoid danger, but it did not reduce its speed. The Titanic maintained its speed of 21.5 knots, about 40 kilometers per hour. On April 14, 1912, the ship received 7 more ice warnings, but Captain Smith and his crew ignored them, continuing at full speed. That night, there was no moonlight, making visibility low due to the absence of the moon. The crow's nest on the ship is a small platform positioned at a high point, serving as a lookout point. Someone is assigned to sit atop it to keep watch for obstacles or other ships. This lookout has to endure extremely low temperatures, especially at night when cold winds blow rapidly. The harsh winds can make the person's eyes tear up, adding difficulty to their visibility. At 11:39 p.m., Frederick Fleet, who was in the crow's nest, spotted a massive iceberg in the Titanic's path. Despite the freezing winds and difficult visibility, he quickly rang the bell 3 times and called the officers on the bridge to warn them. First Officer William received the message and signaled the engine room to steer the ship left, but it was too late. At 11:40 p.m., just a minute later, the Titanic collided with the iceberg. The iceberg was huge, measuring 200 by 400 feet, and matching the crow's nest in height. Scientists estimate its weight to be around 1.5 million tons. The collision occurred on the front right side of the Titanic, near the bow. The bow is the front part of the ship. The ship grazed against the iceberg for about 10 seconds, creating a massive dent and causing small holes in the ship's main body. Moments after the collision, Captain Smith and the ship's architect, Thomas Andrews, rushed to the site to assess the damage. Upon witnessing the extent of the damage, they came to a shocking realization: the ship was going to sink. This revelation was astonishing to them, because they had believed the Titanic to be unsinkable. At the start of this story, I mentioned that the Titanic was believed to be unsinkable due to 2 key safety features. First, it had a double bottom hull, meaning 2 layers in the main body of the ship. This design was meant to ensure that even if the lower layer was damaged, the second layer could still keep the ship afloat. Second, the hull was divided into 16 separate watertight compartments. The idea was that even if up to 4 compartments were filled with water, the ship could still sail without any issues. However, when the Titanic collided with the iceberg, the impact was on the side of the ship where there was only a single layer. As a result, the double bottom hull proved to be of no use. The collision was so severe that it breached 6 out of the 16 watertight compartments, surpassing the safety limit. With water filling multiple compartments, the ship couldn't be saved from sinking. Despite its reputation, the unsinkable ship would sink. At 12 o'clock a.m., 20 minutes after the collision, Captain Smith ordered his crew to send a distress call over the radio, in the hope that nearby ships would pick it up and come to their rescue. Senior radio operator Jack Phillips took charge of sending distress signals one after another, but received no response. Finally, at 12:20 a.m., a ship named RMS Carpathia detected the distress signal. The operator of Carpathia spoke to the Titanic's operator over the radio and directed his ship to move towards the Titanic for rescue. However, there was a significant challenge. Despite its proximity, Carpathia was 107 kilometers away, even if it traveled at its top speed. It would take 3.5 hours to reach the Titanic. But can the Titanic stay afloat for the 3.5 hours? In a desperate attempt to attract attention, the remaining crew members on the Titanic lit up flares and rockets in the sky, hoping that any nearby ships would notice and come to their aid. Sadly, apart from the RMS Carpathia, there was no response from any other ship. Captain Smith, recognizing the severity of the situation, ordered the evacuation of passengers using the lifeboats on the ship. Following the standard protocol, priority was given to women and children to board the lifeboats. However, many passengers on the Titanic were not initially frightened. Believing in the ship's reputation as unsinkable, they remained relatively calm. The company's repeated claims in advertisements that the Titanic was unsinkable likely contributed to this sense of security. Consequently, the first lifeboat, designed for 65 people, only carried 28 passengers, half of its capacity, as it was lowered, reflecting the initial disbelief and underestimation of the seriousness of the situation by some on board. As time passed, water filled the compartments of the Titanic one after another, causing the ship to tilt. The gradual realization that the ship could indeed sink spread among the passengers. By 1 in the morning, so much water had entered the front compartments that the bow of the ship went underwater. As a result, the rear part of the Titanic surfaced, and the propellers at the back emerged from the water. This significant tilt of the ship led to chaos. Panic ensued among the passengers, and by this point, it was clear that the situation was dire. People began to run around in a frenzy, and fights broke out as individuals desperately sought seats in the lifeboats. The once calm atmosphere on the Titanic turned into pandemonium. The shortage of lifeboats became a critical issue on the Titanic, as there were only 20 lifeboats available, accommodating approximately 1,200 people. However, there were around 2,200 people on board. At 2:05 a.m., the last lifeboat was lowered from the Titanic, leaving approximately 1,500 people still on board. In the midst of the chaos, some individuals attempted to secure a place in the lifeboats, leading to conflicts and struggles. Meanwhile, others had come to terms with their fate and chose to stay back on the sinking ship. According to eyewitness, the Titanic broke into two halves around 2:20 a.m. and then slowly began to sink. In less than 3 hours, the unsinkable ship met its tragic fate. Of the 1,500 people still on board, many either drowned with the sinking ship or succumbed to hypothermia for those who knew how to swim. The water temperature was around -2 degrees Celsius, and falling into water at this temperature meant facing the risk of hypothermia and death within minutes. It is widely reported that Captain Edward Smith of the Titanic remained at the wheel until the very end and ultimately went down with the ship. There are some speculations and beliefs that suggest he might have committed suicide, choosing to end his life along with the sinking of the Titanic. The RMS Carpathia, which had set out to rescue the Titanic, arrived at the disaster site around 3:30 to 4 o'clock a.m., about an hour after the Titanic had already sunk. Controversies emerged and investigations were conducted after the Titanic disaster, revealing some shocking facts. Remarkably, another ship, the SS Californian, was only 37 kilometers away from the Titanic that night, and could have reached the distressed ship in time to save the passengers. An hour before the Titanic hit the iceberg, the Californian issued the last iceberg warning, cautioning about the dangerous conditions. However, at 11:15 p.m., the Californian's radio operator turned off the radio, and the ship had come to a stop for the night, considering the ice hazard. Unfortunately, because the radio was off, the Californian didn't receive the distress signal from the Titanic. The two ships were so close that passengers on the Titanic's deck could even see the Californian on the horizon. Reports suggest that after midnight, the crew members on the Californian did observe the rockets fired from the Titanic and informed their captain, Stanley Lord, Unfortunately, Captain Lord dismissed the signals, believing them to be part of the ongoing festivities on the Titanic rather than distress signals. Had Captain Lord taken the rockets and flares seriously, there might have been a chance to save more people aboard the Titanic. Next morning, when they switched their radio on, they received distress signals from the Titanic. They hurried to the site, but unfortunately, it was too late. All they found were lifeless bodies floating in the water. The investigations into the Titanic disaster mainly blamed Captain Lord of the Californian. However, it's important to remember that blaming just one person isn't fair, because many others also played a role in the tragedy. One significant factor was the insufficient number of lifeboats, a decision influenced by the belief that the Titanic was unsinkable. Another critical mistake was made by steersman Robert Hickens. During the iceberg encounter, when an alarm sounded, the officer instructed a left turn to avoid the iceberg. Hickens misunderstood the message and steered the ship to the right, directly towards the iceberg. By the time he realized his error, it was too late to avert the collision. The British inquiry into the Titanic disaster highlighted that the ship had received numerous iceberg warnings and instructions to proceed with caution. However, despite these warnings, the Titanic was sailing at full speed. Why was that? Why did the captain not slow down? J. Bruce Ismay, the chairman and managing director of White Star Line, the company that built the Titanic, may have influenced Captain Smith to maintain high speed. The pressure from the company was driven by a desire to complete the ship's first voyage in just 6 days, breaking a speed record. This way, the Titanic would not only be the largest and most expensive ship but also the fastest, showcasing its prestige and capabilities. On April 14th, at 2 p.m., Captain Smith showed an ice warning to J. Bruce Ismay, suggesting that the ship should slow down. Ismay, wanting to maintain the ship's speed, reportedly stuffed the paper in his pocket to keep it from the crew and passengers. The Titanic disaster had a profound impact on the maritime industry. It led to the establishment of new regulations and standards worldwide to prevent similar tragedies in the future. In 1914, the International Ice Patrol was created to warn approaching ships about icebergs in their path. Additionally, the signing of the International Convention for the Safety of Life at Sea (SOLAS) in 1914 introduced new standards for ships. For instance, regulations were implemented to ensure that ships have an adequate number of lifeboats for every passenger on board. In 1985, after more than 70 years of searching, American ocean explorer Robert Ballard and a French oceanographer discovered the wreckage of the Titanic 3,800 meters under the sea. The ship's two broken pieces laid 600 meters apart. Over the years, the underwater environment has been eroding the ship, and today, only remnants remain. Bacteria and organisms are eating away at its metal framework, and it's anticipated that by 2030, the Titanic will completely disintegrate underwater. If you found this video informative, please subscribe. Let's meet in the next video. Thank you.